Hello, welcome to the Knife Yak channel. Today I pulled the little something out of the memory bag, and it's this unusual multi-tool right here. This multi-tool is called the Spyderco SpydeRench, and this tool has been discontinued twice. So you know something is weird when it's been discontinued twice and it still gives you nightmares. Being a little bit flippant, but there are some serious issues with this tool, and it's also very clever, very interesting in a lot of ways, and very puzzling. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but first let's figure out what this thing is. So as you can tell by looking at it, this is a multi-tool based on a set of slip joint pliers and an adjustable crescent wrench. It also features a functional lockback pocket knife, and it has a 1/4-inch bit driver, and you see that there are some bits that are contained here within the body of the tool. I'll talk more about that in a moment. It also has a diamond file, about which more momentarily, and a pocket clip. So let's figure this thing out. Like I said, in some ways this is reminiscent of one of those Transformer toys, you know, where the robot turns into a toaster and then it turns into a Bradley assault vehicle or whatever. So one of the interesting challenges of this thing is to try to remember how it works every time you use it, because it's very complicated and it's not intuitive at all. But when you in order to use this thing as either pliers or as a wrench, you have to separate the handle right here. Just pull this part like that. If you flip it over, you can see that it's a slip joint pliers, and so this pivot area, it can be released like that, and you can get access to the bits down inside here. And you can also well, before I do that, let me back up a little. So to reassemble this, we'll have to put this little knob shaped thing here, which forms the pivot, through that little hole, that oval shaped hole, and you bring that through like that. And so you can by sliding that, you can adjust the size of the plier jaws. So if you put it in this lower position, the jaws will be wide, and if you slide it upwards and close it, it makes for a smaller jaw opening. And so yeah, you just basically use it like any pair of slip joint pliers. The handles end up not being very long, so you don't get a very much leverage. And if you squeeze hard, there's a lot of corners and angles here that can cut into your hand. So this is not designed for really hard use, but it's not useless. It does work. And so if we swing this around all the way, we'll swing this part of the handle around, and if you can watch and notice, you'll see the edge of this bottom jaw right here will swing around, and it will catch under this little spring mechanism here. So yeah, we'll just bring this thing around. Sorry, I can't do it. There we go. So yeah, you bring this thing around like that, and that bottom jaw will lock into place right there. And there's a little catch that holds that and releases it under spring tension. And then that gives us a nice long handle, so we can get plenty of leverage to use the adjustable wrench, which is actually pretty cool, right? Now that thing's ugly, but it works. And to release this thing, then we'd just push down on the little spring access point right here. Just push down on that, and that will release the catch. You can see that little metal catch moving there, right? And then that releases that, so we can swing around. And then there is, I was going to show you this. So this metal rod here is actually a diamond file, and it has a flat side It has a convex side and a concave side. And there's also a small Phillips screwdriver on one end and a small slotted screwdriver, whatever you call those things. Unfortunately, this as a screwdriver, this thing never really worked very well because I don't think it's shaped correctly to really fit into any normal screw I could ever find. But in the end of this handle, where the knife is, there is a hexagonal slot to hold the, or hole to hold the standard 1/4 inch driver bits, right? So I just arbitrarily pick some. They can be Torx or hex or whatever, but any standard hardware store 1/4 inch drive bit will work. So that's held in place there, and there's a little detent in there to keep it in place. It doesn't hold it very well, so you have to be a little bit careful for it not to fall out. So it's kind of interesting when you get a chance to look at the inside workings of a lockback pocket knife if you've never had that privilege, if you've never disassembled a knife. So you can see the back spring here with the little bar that presses down on the spring, right? So when you swing this around, you can see that there's a little tab there, a little tooth that will engage in a little corresponding little slot there. So we swing that around and it engages the tooth, locks into place. Now we can't really use this as a functional knife very well because this is very thin and very angular, and it will definitely hurt your hand. You can use it this way, but if I ever used it, I would probably just leave it assembled. And so I'll put this thing back. Let's stick this bit in there. When you put this thing back in, it was very finicky because you have to orient this just a certain way. And this little point right here at the end of the Phillips screwdriver forms the point, which will then lodge into this little hole that you see. This little hole that you see right here, so this forms the detent to engage with that little hole right there when we close this whole thing. So if I can put this back together, see if I can do it. And there's a spring here that holds this whole thing together, right? So you have to put the flat screwdriver, the slotted screwdriver thing in there like that and just ram it in. But you'll notice that the little detent thing isn't protruding enough to actually function. So we have to orient this, I think, so the flat side is down. We'll try this again. And it's very finicky, so it's very hard to get that in there just right. And you have to kind of finagle it. It's still not in far enough. So this is why I think this thing might have been discontinued. It's just so hard and so awkward to fidget that thing in there. Let's see if I can get it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Let's see. Trying to get that thing fully engaged in the spring, shove it down there. Oh, there we go. So now you can see the point of that protruding out just a little bit. And that little protuberance there, when we put this thing back together, let's get this thing oriented right. Now as I close this, that little pointy end of the Phillips screwdriver will nest into that little hole that I showed you right there, and it just snaps into place, right? So that's actually kind of cool. Makes a nice compact little package. If you want to use the knife, you got your thumb hole there. You just open it like any Spyderco knife, and you have a fully functional pocket knife. This, back in the day, when this came out in the late 1990s, they were using 440C stainless, which is actually pretty good quality steel for a pocket knife. And it was sharp, just like any Spyderco. It's like a small Delica, right? Hollow grind blade, and very functional. But I mean, it's kind of heavy, and it's a bit of a monkey puzzle to kind of figure out how this thing works, but it does work. So here's our lock bar access point here. So you just press that down. You have to be careful because there is a choil here, but yeah, your hand is so far away from it that you'll probably cut yourself when this thing swings closed. I would definitely use two hands for this, but you can see the inner workings here, right? So when you push down on that, you see that little tooth disengage, right? And so, yeah, press this down like that, close it like that, and just carry it around. So this is as I said, this is a very unusual multi-tool. Back when this came out, it seems like in my mind, I think this may have come out before or about the same time as the Leatherman Wave. And so at the time, there weren't very many functional multi-tools that had easy one-hand access for the knife blade. And it's also, at the time, and maybe still, one of the few multi-tools that had more or less full-sized, fully functional adjustable wrench and slip joint pliers. So that's unusual, right? But obviously, I think needle nose pliers are more useful than this kind of slip joint pliers. But that wrench really is kind of cool. So anyway, I just thought you'd find that interesting. Those of you who are too young to have ever seen one of these things. And yeah, there you go. Thank you for watching.